Hello and welcome. You're watching Business Today TV. I am Sakshi Batra. Well, it's good news for the top bosses of India Inc. as the salaries of CXOs are on the rise. This is what is being brought up by Aon Consulting Firm and the latest survey right there. And joining in to discuss more about this survey details, I have a very special guest joining right in, Roopank Chaudhary. He's the partner at Aon's Human Capital Solutions India, joins right in. Thank you so much, Roopank, for being with us. And first, help us understand, what this hike of 8.9% really means. I can see in the highlights that it is the highest in 5 years. Could you give us more details about it?
Sure, Sakshi. So, earlier in the year, we had released our overall salary increase numbers for India Inc., which were 9.9%. And even that was the highest in the last 5 years. So not surprisingly, I think the trend that has followed that overall number is that the salary increase for top executives, the CEOs and CXOs, is also on the rise at 8.9%. It is the highest in the last 5 years. It was 7.9% last year. Of course, during the COVID year 2020, it had fallen down to 5.1%. There was a time when many CXOs and CEOs had not taken a pay hike. They had faced pay cuts. They had also voluntarily taken pay cuts. So I think it's sort of a accumulation of the last years with the resurgence back in the economy, the growth back on track, the fundamentals looking strong, and the very strong business sentiment that we're seeing in corporate India that has led to executives also getting a much higher pay than the last 2 years.
Absolutely. So the worst seems to be behind us, and definitely for the top bosses at India Inc. Help us understand what has come up in your survey. What's the average compensation at this level right now at? And if you could also give us some more details, if you've got to understand in terms of the fixed and the variable pay as well, and what are the the contrasts that you've seen here?
Sure. So, if we were to just break this number down, I think the first analysis is that if you look across sectors, we are seeing 3-4 sectors, have the highest increase across the CXOs and CEOs. So we have technology and ITES, manufacturing, financial institutions, life sciences, consumer are the 4 sectors or 5 sectors which have given the highest increase in the range of 8 to 9%. If we look at the average increase or average number for the business heads, it has ranged from 1.3 crores, and this is both fixed plus variable without the long-term incentive. It has ranged from 1.3 crores to 4.3 crores, depending on how big the business size has been. And if you were to do a sort of a comparison of the breakup between fixed pay and the variable pay, what we are seeing is that at the CEO level, almost 50% of the pay is fixed and 50% is variable or pay at risk. And that 50% in turn is divided between 21% between annual bonus and 29% being long-term incentive, which is any sort of incentive which is beyond 1 year, like your stock option and restricted stock. And for CEO -1 and CEO -2s, the numbers differ. There, the fixed pay is around about 60% and 70% respectively, and the rest is what we call as pay at risk.
Okay, so if you could also help me understand this, which sectors have had the maximum raise in the salaries this time around in the what has been brought up in the survey?
Sure. So if you look at sectoral, I think from executive compensation perspective, the manufacturing sector actually has seen the highest projected increase.
Okay.
It is 9.3% vis-a-vis 7.4% last year, followed by ITES at 9.2%, life sciences at 8.4%, and financial services at 8.2%.
Okay, and could you also help me understand what has really led to this spike in the salary hikes over the last few years? You've been seeing this like highest in the last 5 years. So what has really led to this kind of an increase in the salaries?
So I think 2-3 reasons. I think one is it's mirroring what we are seeing in salaries across India, which have also gone up for the last 5 years, right? Some of the reasons are the same. Much stronger business growth and buoyant growth. A lot of the salaries were not increased for 2 years because of COVID and the pay cuts. So it's an incremental impact of that happening as well. Of course, there is a great resignation where people have moved. So attrition has also led to a much shortage of CXOs and CEOs at the top level. But the most fundamental reason still continues to be the whole focus towards tech and digital. Even if you look at the data on manufacturing, these are CEOs who can actually marry digital and manufacturing to bring in more new age practices, right? And which is where the increase in that sector is the highest. So I think these 3-4 reasons have possibly pushed the numbers high, and we expect this to go over at least another 2 years.
Absolutely. And you answered my next question partly in your this answer. I was coming to that factor of attrition, which in the Q4 earnings that are currently on and we are looking at is a major concern for some of the sectors like IT sector. What part has attrition really played right now in this kind of a salary hike? And is that going to be a cause of concern even going forward for the industries going forward from here?
So, attrition at 21% for India, which our survey had showed in March earlier this year, usually impacts the junior and middle management much more. So I would say that attrition being the sole driver of salary increase would be for the slightly lower levels. Having said that, when we see new age companies and startups hiring from the more traditional sectors, a lot of these people are going as CXOs or CXO minus twos, which technically comes to be part of executive compensation. So there certainly has been some impact, especially on sectors where digital and technology are playing a large role, such as IT, ITES, where we are seeing a sizable attrition across all levels and increments obviously being given to retain that. What we're also seeing is that in many senior levels, retention bonuses or long-term incentive, which is basically to ring-fence talent for the next 3-4 years, is also becoming much sharper. Simply because the retention part is becoming important, because you cannot afford to lose people even after 1 year.
Okay. And last question to you, Roopank. I want to understand what is the outlook going forward from here. You know why I ask you this is because there are several macro concerns that are cropping up at this point in time. We are seeing several macro data points indicating at perhaps a US recession coming in perhaps FY23 end or the next year too. If that situation were to arise, what could be the possible hurdles to this kind of a growth that we are seeing in the salaries going forward?
So I think there are a couple of things. I think one is the fears around recession globally, right? And of course, whatever impact the Ukraine war has had on many areas, including supply costs. There's also a lot of talk of inflation being very, very high in India, right? And is it also hitting the bottom line of companies? Of course, it is, and hence companies have to keep be mindful of that. I think 2 months back we were only focusing on attrition and the demand supply of talent. Now aspects like inflation and the concerns around this are coming up. I would say that in India, at least, the fundamentals remain far more strong, and the outlook remains far more positive. And I think it's still going to be driven largely by the challenge that we are seeing in talent moving out, attrition, and the shortage of supply in some of the sectors. That I think will still continue to drive the salary increases. Having said that, inflation has a dual effect. It is having an impact on your supply cost. At the same time, with inflation, you can't also give lesser increases to your employees because they have so much inflation to face and overcome.
Okay, well, on that note, thank you so much, Roopank, for being with us and sharing all these insights from your latest survey with all our viewers of Business Today as well. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being with you and speaking and seeking all those insights.
Thank you, Sakshi. Pleasure.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.